So we ready to go? Greetings. Love. Love is an underlying principle of the creation of which we are a part. Love is essentially the way that life force expresses itself. It's an underlying principle. Within this particular creation, other creations have different underlying principles and tend to have different harmonics of all that is as their underlying principle. However, this particular creation, the underlying principle is love. And that love exists as an unlimited, unbounded potential. But simply because it exists as a potential doesn't mean that it's necessarily expressed in its purest form. Because although you take life in, and for all intents and purposes that life is love, you're free to distort that energy, to contaminate that energy, to change that energy, to lower the frequency of that energy once you've taken it in, and then express that. The way of heart mastery is to take that love in as life. So one of the fundamentals is acknowledging that the universe, the creator, is fundamentally benevolent, is not out to get you, has not put you here as some cruel joke, that the creator is fundamentally benevolent. And the nature of the creator is that you are free to do with the gift of life whatever you choose. Whatever you choose. Now some then go, oh, you know, God does this and God took my child from me and God did that to me. God, force, God source, the creator, if you will, gives the opportunity of free will. So the gift of life is given, and then as an apparent separated stream of consciousness, you are able to express life, to live life, and to do with life whatever you choose. And everything ultimately is the consequence of choices which are made. Now, a lot of people take that and turn it into a very fatalistic, coward's approach to life. Oh, I'm at 2 hours late for this appointment, and instead of saying, well, my time management skills are terrible and need work, and I'm going to take responsibility, acknowledge that I was disrespectful by being late for this appointment, I'm going to say, well, because I was 2 hours late, it must be God's will. Because if it happened, it must be God's will. So it's God's fault. That's very, very common in the New Age movement. It's actually very common in Orthodox religiosity, and it's also bullshit. If you have free will, you have the opportunity to orchestrate and organise your life so you can be on time for appointments. Now, everything that you have done in your journey through eternity moves energy around, sets up force currents. Just like if you put your toe or your foot or your hand into water and move it around, then it will create ripples. Now, some of those ripples dissipate in a very short period of time, depending on the nature of the disturbance of the universal energy field that you create with your choices, the consequences may be ripples which will remain in motion. The consequence of that may remain in motion for thousands of years, millions of years. So you will also find, much like if you experience two people in a pond, both splashing, the net result, the co-creation of the ripples, is going to be a combination of the ripples set in motion by both of those people. Yeah? So imagine that with the billions and billions and billions of life forces, life forms. When life force takes form, we call it a life form, and we are expressing as life forms. We are also often termed identities as opposed to entities. You can have a point of consciousness which is intelligent and sentient, aware and affecting, having an influence on its sphere that it is within. And it may be a life form, in which case it's an identity. If it has no life, it has no form itself, yet it still has a focus of consciousness somewhere, it's an entity. And they may be of similar intelligence, they may be of similar evolution, one will have a form and one will not, but one is not less real than the other, and not more real, more valid. It's simply a choice within the possibility of how energy may express itself. The whole waves particle thing. Energy may express itself as ordered particles or as waves. And you can concentrate waveforms into an energetic focus, which will be a type of beingness, which will allow that energy being to relate with other energy beings in form or out of form. Depends on whether or not the being in form is able to recognize something that doesn't apparently seem to be like itself, and has the ability to transfer energy into understanding, which is what channeling is, to be able to convert energy into understanding. So beings may exist within many forms. Certainly, we exist as life forms. Many of the beings that we work with were formerly life forms and now, for whatever reason, choose to exist as an entity, a being without form. And many of those beings choose to share, impart their understanding, their knowing, with those of us who are aspiring to become better transformers. So we take that energy of love in, which is life, and then we're free to do with it what we want to do with it. Now, if we express that love, take that love from the potential of all that is, the universal life force as it's becoming popularly known, and we express that relatively purely, in practical terms that means we cause no harm and we cause no disruption. We don't block energy, perhaps, which would be for the highest good of all, within whatever sphere of influence we're in at that particular time. Then we are, you might look at it as a pure transformer. But we're able to take that energy of life in and do whatever we want with it. So we can twist it round, we can go into processes of denial, of avoidance, we can pretend that energy is different to what it actually is, we can label it different, we can twist things around, We can then create reality models. We can create structures, belief structures on the mental plane through which we view reality and then believe that that is reality rather than actually more like a picture of reality, and a poor picture of reality at that. Then we can extrapolate that and we can attempt to force others to enter into an absolute belief that our view of reality is somehow godlike. This happens a lot. Or we can seek to simply acknowledge the truth, to perceive the truth. And this is the ancient way of self-transcendence, to effect your own investigation of the world, your place within it, and your origins. And the Cosmosis process gives you the techniques which allows you to effect that investigation for yourself, and rather than clone yourself in the likeness of a guru or a teacher, to come to an understanding of how you may best express your own unique understanding, which comes from the journey you have been through since you became in form. And also it brings with you a sense of what you would choose to do given who you actually are and what you know. It brings ultimately a very, very clear sense of purpose with that inner knowing. Now, many who are here choose to take in that same potential life force, that love, and lower its vibration. Love in its pure form flows, is unbounded, is impossible to control. It will simply move out and affect and impact what it chooses to do. It will flow just like water does, just like steam does. And that scares people. That really scares a lot of people. That's all it comes down to. So what's a solution to that? Okay, well, let's lower the vibration of that so that it freezes, like water freezes into ice. That's what we call fear. And we lower the vibration of love enough, it gets solid. We turn it into fear, and then we can have nice little ordered chunks, and I can take this chunk and say, this is my chunk, and it's not going to slip through my fingers. It's not just going to dissipate. It's just going to, it's there. I can actually accumulate little cubes of fear. Ooh. I can base my entire self-worth on how much my little stash of fear accumulates. Wow, that makes me feel really safe. Then we can actually trade fear as a commodity. We could actually convince other people that they need a certain amount of fear to be secure, to feel safe. And we can set up a system where we trade fear. Now, if we want to perpetuate this, we would actually have to set up something like a scarcity mentality. We would have to start to believe that there isn't enough life force to go around, that it isn't unbounded. So over a long period of time, you would have to indoctrinate people to believe that fear is the way. And not only that fear is the way, that the higher vibrations, when you melt fear, it becomes like a liquid state and then a gaseous state and then like a plasma state. These are the higher forms of love which we all aspire towards. We would have to actually convince people that it's very clever of them to fear love, to fear that higher love, to be suspicious of anyone that works with that unbounded energy. And such is the way that's occurred here. But you don't have to buy into that. You can learn to work with, to transduce, and to transform energy. And in doing so, you will have an impact upon this planet and its universe as far as how everything proceeds here. Because as people start to get really good at transducing or changing the vibration of energy and transforming and purifying, also purifying, and many processes that you've been given to work with are about purifying energy which has been contaminated with distorted vibrations. And in doing so, what you're doing is increasing the amount of free-form, unbounded love. So, love, giving and receiving love, is really the basics of cosmosis. Giving and receiving love. And many of you have some difficulties in giving and receiving love. So what I'd like to do for those who are here and for those who will be watching this presentation is to get some ideas around what it means to love, what it means to be loved, and how you know that you're loving and how you know that you're being loved. So let's look at the physical level. On the physical level, who would like to volunteer? It may be how you are now or how you've been in the past. How do you know when you're loving on the physical level? Speak loudly.
I find there's a level of tenderness and gentleness that I display towards another.
Okay. Anyone else?
More activated energy around the heart, activation around the heart area.
So you actually feel...
Yeah, you can feel a lot more energy.
You feel love as a physical force. Because love is a measurable force, that's the thing. Love in action is a measurable force. We have this potential, like love as a potential energy, as pure life force available to us. But when we do something with it, it becomes a force, a tangible force. And as we radiate that, as we express that, then that's what causes the ripples. So you can actually feel a tangible, like it's almost like that rosy glow that people talk about. So
like petals unfolding.
Uh-huh.
And it's that's where the energy is concentrated. If you tune into your body, the concentration of energy is higher in the heart area.
Okay. Lorraine?
I feel that you have more of awareness of what's going on around you and acceptance of everything, but you're just so much more aware of how you're feeling and how everyone's feeling. You just see it from a complete different perspective.
Okay. Okay.
There's an appreciation. I experience an appreciation for circumstances, for people, even a sense of connection with physical things like trees or nature or workplace. It could be anything, but that's an experience.
So when you love on the physical level and express that love, there's many ways. The obvious way that you can express love physically is kindness. You actually feel gratitude, you actually feel appreciation within yourself. It's the whole, if you give, then you shall receive. That's the way the dynamics are set up here, to actually encourage you to become a better transducer of energy, better transformer of energy. You actually get that back as you express in a way which is in an absence of control and an absence of attachment to outcome, and you truly engage in the culture of love on the physical level. That's largely all around kindness. Then you actually feel pretty good physically. You actually feel a lot of appreciation within yourself. Your self-esteem is very high. Anyone else?
It feels very natural, even when it's very intense.
Feels very natural. Yeah. So almost to act on the physical level in a non-loving way is to somewhat feel forced. Yeah, that's often the case. Jenny?
Your cells vibrate at a high frequency. You can feel your cells vibrating and the energy flowing in all the body.
So you can feel that more energised in your body?
The energy starts flowing,
yeah.
And also a sense of harmony within the body itself, a sense of being more at one with your physical body and kind of, feeling more at one with the physical body of the earth. And
yes, yes.
And I sometimes feel that, like I love to move and dance, and if I feel it very physically and that presence of love in my body and in the world around me physically, then I tend to flow and move, and it really takes me on a journey in the physical body.
Yep. Anyone else?
There's a humming sound as well. There's a sound, a frequency of sound that you hear on an inner plane level, on the physical. You can hear for me, it's like a humming.
That's interesting.
You feel it's emanating from the body as well.
Sure. It's definitely a tangible force which is radiated from the physical cells.
Yeah.
Pauline?
For me, it's contentment and also a sort of a purposefulness that I get when I'm expressing love.
Uh-huh.
There's also the physical contact side of physical love, like touching with care and gentleness and like tenderness that was mentioned earlier.
Yep.
It's a beautiful exchange, right down to the physical.
Yep. Yep.
Heightened senses.
It's the act of harmlessness in interaction with others too, on a physical level. It's like a
That's a good point. The whole harmlessness thing, that's a really good point. The thing is, many people don't want to be loved. If you love them, you actually provoke all sorts of weird responses. And sometimes you actually get an aggressive response back. And if you have to be careful that ultimately that it's about causing no harm. So that's where it gets tricky, because it's not just going around constantly beaming out love. People may, if you go around radiating love from your physical cells, a lot of people are going to interpret that you're on heat and that you want to have sex, and then it's going to come on to you. So, because that's just what they know. That's just what they know. Many people are very suspicious of people who openly demonstrate affection. Unfortunately, we live in a world where not many people, particularly not men, are very physically demonstrative with affection. That's a little sad. That's a little sad. So boundaries are really important, and that's why learning to love, learning to take life in and emanate love is important, but also learning to exercise wisdom as far as boundaries are concerned, and respecting the rights of others to choose how they want to live their life and the way they want to process their energy. Anyone else?
Yes.
Lorraine?
For me, it's feeling really safe and really present in my body while holding really appropriate boundaries at the same time.
Uh-huh. Lynn?
Yes, I feel very much as if I'm just being who I really am, and I just feel like, I love doing it, and I might have the visual when I feel that connection with the other person, and I can see the light in their eyes and feel the rapport and the connection with them, and that feels really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real feeling of vulnerability and also authenticity. You just be yourself, and also there's like a radiance that I feel from the heart when you're just yourself, just your authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels completely natural when you are really truly loving. It just feels like it's the most normal, natural state to be in.
Okay. Anyone else?
I experience a lot of joy.
Speak up.
I experience a lot of joy.
Uh-huh, yeah.
In that
absolutely.
It does feel natural,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of joy comes from
Very
that.
joyous experience. Yeah, great point.
There's also a flowingness to it, a harmonising effect, I think.
A harmonising effect. Yeah. So then the obvious next question is, why the bloody hell don't you do it more? Are you committed to learning how to be able to express love in each and every moment without causing harm and without provoking unnecessary emotional reactions?
Yes.
Well, you're in the right place, because that's what Cosmosis is all about. In a nutshell, that's what Cosmosis is all about. Emotionally, on the emotional level, ooh, How do you know when you're expressing love emotionally?
Feelings of positive regard towards what you're
Exactly.
expressing it towards.
Feelings of positive regard towards people, unconditional positive regard. Yeah, that really is the great testimony to love being expressed emotionally. Absolutely, spot on. Jenny?
You're actually coming from the heart as opposed to the head. So the emotions, it'll be from here, not from the solar plexus.
Uh-huh.
So there's an allowingness with it. An allowingness.
An allowingness, yeah. And a joy, really, because joy is not something which is only experienced on any particular level. Joy has no opposite, and joy can be experienced physically, emotionally, mentally, soul level, spiritually.
It's a sense of oneness as well.
Sense of oneness.
And then like an honouring and a respect.
Yeah. An honouring and a respect. I say, a mutual joy and respect in each other's lives. That's a huge emotional component to that experience.
A strong sense of duty of care.
A sense of duty of care, yeah, but it's effortless, isn't it? That feeling, that duty of care. It's not like an obligation or a chore. The duty of care becomes a joy in itself. So joy really is a very common thread in this, isn't it, really? Yes. So joy really has to be chosen as a state of being. That's fundamental to the whole Cosmosis ideal as well. To choose joy as a state of being. And for experiences to be joyful. And to the degree that your experiences are joyful, that actually gives you an understanding of how well you're going in the actual expressing of love physically and emotionally. If the joy is absent, then there's something incorrect in your expression. There's no pass or fail, remember, with Cosmosis, but there's competent and not yet competent. So to what degree are you not yet competent if you're not finding the joy in things? If you are focused on a long-term goal and you've experienced an enormous amount of frustration in people getting in the way and you don't seem to be getting anything done, you can experience that very human experience of being dammed up and frustrated and still experience joy. Because joy has no opposite, the interesting thing is that nothing is mutually exclusive to joy. That doesn't matter what you're experiencing, you can choose joy. Saying that I have up there at the back, never mind the likes or dislikes, just do what needs to be done. This may not be happiness, but it is greatness. And within that, there can be an enormous amount of joy in the satisfaction and achievement of making your mark on the world in a loving way. In a loving way. So emotionally, how do you know? How do you know? And I'm not just asking you the textbook Cosmosis right answers. How do you know, and how do some people know? Because there's an enormous amount of dysfunction involved in this as well. I'm just not asking for the textbook ideal. How is it that people know that they're expressing love emotionally?
For me, it's a delight in one another's company, and you light up when you're together.
So feelings of elation emotionally in the company of someone.
I guess it's joy too.
Like a willingness to allow yourself to express that, to be true in that moment, and to have the feelings, but really to just allow that willingness to.
So there's a trust involved as well, emotionally. That's an important part of it too. Linda.
I feel it as a communion with people, animals, things.
So kind of a oneness.
Yeah, not necessarily spoken.
Yep. So that's certainly that affinity, an emotional affinity.
There can be intimacy.
Yeah.
On so many different levels.
Yeah.
Emotional body.
Yeah.
Just being completely open and trusting to that person.
Yeah. And when you really have it, you start to have, like Linda said, a lot of this unspoken communication. And I won't ask you if you want a cup of tea because I know you know you want one. I'll just make one for you. And you know, many different kinds of expressions of that. You tend to, the empathy starts to build, and you start to know what the other person is experiencing, and what you're experiencing in a very heightened way. But also you're aware of the emotional ripples from you and that person and what they are creating together also. Lisa?
A sense of openness can come from that, and I've experienced, like with a group of people, when we're all in this harmonious state emotionally, from that we're in a lot of rapport, a lot of creativity can come from that. It just happens very, very naturally, but it's feeling that harmony together first and that rapport, and things just flow. There's a synergy and creativity as a result of that. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
There's also an element of, from this whole trust and openness and empathy, there's an intimacy, there's also a level of nurture and sometimes protection, but not in a fear-based way, more like in, you know, looking after the sacredness of this exchange.
Yeah, so that experience of sacredness.
Yeah, I was about to say that there's a sacred unity in that relationship.
Okay.
And people tend to feel like they're on the same side.
Yep.
Consideration.
Consideration, yeah. Okay, what about receiving? How do you know if you're receiving love physically?
A warm glow on the physical.
A warm glow, well, that is true, because you know love is a measurable force. So a lot of people use the words "I love you" and talk a lot about love, may even act in a way that a loving person acts, but they're not actually on a cellular level using their physical body to radiate love. So they're talking about love, but what you feel is all about fear and control and scarcity and ridicule and criticism and, you know, passive aggression. We've all had that experience. So it's not just that someone thinks that they're loving or is going through the motions because that's what they've been taught. It is actually, takes a lot of discipline to take life in and to radiate love on the physical level. So with people that I work with, the people that I mentor, in the final analysis all I'm really interested in is how much love I feel in various situations in life. Are they radiating physically, emotionally, mentally, soul level and spiritually? You know, you can be a spiritual miser, and that can taint the type of spiritual love that you're expressing. You can be caught up in a very dogmatic, self-righteous, condemning sort of orthodox religiosity, and that the sort of the spiritual level of love can actually completely shut down, and then everything can be brought down to the level of the ego. And this is how things like the Spanish Inquisition and such things occur. The vestiges, to some degree, are still present throughout Europe in certain, you know, in certain quarters, just like it is in some places like the United States. You know, you have the right to free will as long as it's not expressed publicly. That's actually very much like what it is in Europe too. Very much so in a lot of countries in Europe. You have the right to free will as long as it's, you know, your free will is expressed in your free speech and your own personal views, but you don't express it publicly. And there is, perhaps you don't have your head cut off anymore, but certainly there are risks that you take if you express opinion. And it's very sad in a democratic system, if you live in a democratic country, when you're not allowed to question your own government. But that's what's happening. And it's happening not just in the United States, not just in Australia. It's happening all over the world for the best of reasons. And many people have said many times that, you know, those who are willing in the name of safety to give up basic rights and freedoms do not deserve liberty. So the world needs more love, and the world needs more wisdom. How do you know if you're receiving love physically?
Usually there's a lot of demonstration of kindness and affection with an appropriate frame.
So physical affection, yeah.
There's also a feeling of heart expansion as well too, like there's a heart connection, and then through that.
So you actually can feel effect within the heart area of the love being radiated towards you. Mm-hmm.
Feel very grateful.
You feel very grateful.
Sense of well-being.
Sense of well-being, so a sense of feeling nurtured. Yeah.
A sense of safety too.
Sense of all the dysfunctional stuff. Well, you know, like
I was going to say
the squirming.
the toes curling.
Projecting.
For a lot of people, if they're in a relationship, the only way that they know that they're being loved physically is if the person wants to have sex with them 24 hours a day. Is that functional? Who here hasn't experienced that to some degree? Many of you, of course you would have equated love and sex. And that's very dysfunctional to do that, although sex is a wondrous opportunity to express physical love and physical affection. But when it becomes something which is a preoccupation, or something which is about filling a hole within yourself through that, like anything, it becomes an addiction and it becomes demeaning. So lots of these things, can be functional or dysfunctional.
You might be used to things being done for you, but with an agenda.
Right. Yeah, right. So someone might be doing things which are apparently kind, yet their motivation may be to control you. So that's not about love. So certainly you have to feel the love, but many people learn through techniques to actually, to some degree, radiate love with the various levels of their energy system, yet they're not actually expressing love. They're not expressing kindness. They're not expressing nurture. But for a lot of people, the only way, they keep score. And this is a popular thing in Scripture. Love does not keep score. But unfortunately, many, many, many people, it's probably something that women tend to do more than men, is keep score. So, this person loves me if they give me X amount of their time every week and give me their complete attention for that. This person loves me if they give me flowers 7 times a year. This person loves me if they do that. If they don't do those things, then they don't love me, regardless of how much love, regardless of how much care, regardless of how much nurture, regardless of how much presence within that person's heart that you hold. And that is one of the greatest barriers to receiving. The expectation of what it is to receive love. And if you're the sort of person who does keep score, you will try to punish the person for not acting in the way that you need to so you feel loved. So you're actually, that's other oriented. You're using the other person to make you feel loved, to make you feel good. And you get angry with them and probably quite passively aggressive with them if they don't act in such a way that makes you feel loved. That is very, very selfish. It's very, very, very dysfunctional. And these are the sorts of things we have to encourage people that we're mentoring to move away from, although that's the sort of thing they've probably been taught to do by their parents, by the significant others in their lives. Through the experiences, that's the way most people act. My missus loves me because she lets me go to the pub every night and she never whinges about it. You hear people say bizarre things. about how they quantify love in its tangible demonstration. Right? So as you go through the Cosmosis training, as you go through the Cosmosis mentoring, all of these issues are dealt with because you have to learn to engage in an entirely new behaviour. A behaviour which is about the expression of love and healthy boundaries and wisdom. Emotionally, how do you know if you're receiving love emotionally?
Similar feelings to giving love. You'll feel it, the love in you as well, same feelings.
Okay. Okay.
If you're actually receiving it without all the dysfunctional stuff.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you're in a situation, in any sort of relationship, it may be romantic, it may not be, maybe within a family situation, a business situation, and you have someone who loves to give love and someone who loves to receive love, the person who loves to receive love, who may not be giving any love at all, who's just like an energy parasite, would be experiencing very similar things to, as far as the phenomena of existence is concerned, to the person who is loving an enormous amount. So that's interesting when you use empathy to read what's going on for people when you're mentoring people. You can't just go on what they're feeling emotionally, the phenomena in their physical body. It's very similar. If there's a lot of love going in or out, or in and out, the phenomena in the body is quite similar. So it's not just a matter of taking a snapshot and then drawing all of these very empirical assertions and conclusions from a snapshot empathically. So it's important that you learn to be able to sense whether or not the love's coming in, the love's going out, and also the balance between in and out when you're mentoring, because that gives you a really good indication of how balanced they are in their individual sovereignty. Because some people need others to love them emotionally, to pour a lot of emotional love towards them for them to feel good. And really, if you're doing that, you're preventing the other person from growing emotionally. Alright? So that's all of these things are very interesting to be able to sense and to be able to perceive really accurately, particularly if you're going to do Cosmosis work with couples or within a group situation, particularly when it moves into an organisational setting. If you have an organisational setting, a corporate setting, or any sort of organisational setting, it's like the weird dynamics that you have between romantic partners, except on a much larger scale. And the phenomena gets more bizarre often. So you've got to be able to recognise, delineate certain things, recognise certain things, and not only see the dynamics of exchange, physically, emotionally, but also mentally. Just quickly, how do you know if you're loving mentally?
Your mind's like a still pond.
You can have a very active mind, though, and still be emanating love mentally. Yes?
The thoughts that one projects, the energy.
Yes, the thoughts that one projects. You're actually affirming love around the other person. You're affirming that the person is, being uplifted and improving, and you don't have thoughts of control or fear of loss and all those sort of thoughts. How do you know if you're receiving love mentally?
You feel encouraged?
You feel encouraged, exactly. The effect of the other person's thoughts coming at you encourages you to strive to be better, to improve. That's the only way that you'll possibly know. What about at soul level? What about the experience of love, giving and receiving love at soul level?
It's very magnetic.
It's very magnetic. The enormous sense of affinity, enormous sense of rapport,
Expansion.
Yeah.
enormous sense of expansion, and nothing seems to matter. The phenomena of doesn't seem to matter. If you have that love bond between two souls, the other person that you have this great love with, they might do certain things which, if you didn't have that love with them, it'd bug the shit out of you. But because there is that love thing, none of that phenomena seems to matter. That's a really good indication.
And time's distorted as well.
Time, yeah, there is that timelessness associated with moments when you have that experience. Absolutely. Love, much more, we'll go into this much more as we go through the mentoring process. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.